Welcome everyone to the Jim Rohn channel. In today's video, I want to share with you a topic that perhaps no one wants to talk about, but it's an inevitable part of life. The price that avoidant people pay when they lose their friends. As a psychologist, I have witnessed many cases of avoidant people facing severe consequences when they lose important relationships. It's not just immediate loneliness and emptiness, but also a psychological burden that haunts them throughout their lives. You might think, I'm not an avoider, I'm always ready to face any problem. But I believe that within each of us, there's a part of avoidance. It could be avoiding a difficult conversation, avoiding a responsibility, or avoiding negative emotions. And sometimes, that avoidance can lead to unexpected consequences. In this video, I will share with you a concept that I call the wheel of death of avoidance. It's a vicious cycle in which avoidant people constantly try to escape from relationships, but ultimately face loneliness and regret. Join me in exploring the wheel of death of avoidance and find out if you are trapped in this loop. And more importantly, I will share tips, solutions so that you can break free from that loop and build sincere, meaningful relationships. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss my next engaging videos. Now, let's examine the model I call the wheel of avoidant death. There are 8 stages in this cycle, but what's most crucial for us are the final 4, where everything becomes clear. When an avoider decides to end a relationship, they often feel relieved, believing they've escaped commitment, made the right choice to avoid getting hurt. Initially, they enjoy this liberation, relishing their newfound independence, no longer worrying about others' expectations or the feeling of being too close to someone. However, this joy gradually fades. They begin to feel empty, realizing they no longer have anyone to share life's little moments with. Loneliness creeps in, and they wonder if they made a mistake. Eventually, they fall into the familiar loop. Instead of looking back and learning from the past, they ask themselves, why can't I ever find the right person? And so they plunge into a new relationship, only to have it end the exact same way. This is the endless loop of the avoider, an inescapable cycle because they've never truly confronted their inner fear. But there's something happening beneath the surface that the wheel of avoidant death model doesn't capture. If this is true, it could completely change how we understand the psychology of avoidant individuals. Let's start with an important concept from Amir Levine and Rachel Heller's book, Attached, mentioned on page 124, Phantom X. Levine and Heller describe this phenomenon as a kind of false recollection of the past. When an avoider has been away from a relationship long enough, they tend to forget all the negative things that used to bother them about their former partner. They start to wonder what went wrong and reminisce about a lost love. This traps them in an illusion, an idealized version of their ex that they can't have back. People often think that Phantom X helps avoidant individuals justify never truly connecting with someone. But there's something that makes me wonder. There are 2 common ways this phenomenon is interpreted, and I believe both are not entirely correct. 2 common scenarios of Phantom X. One is that the relationship ended too soon. In this case, the avoider leaves a relationship before the partner's flaws have a chance to fully surface. Maybe they were the one being left, or they actively left when the relationship wasn't too deep yet. So the ex-partner remains intact in their mind. A perfect image, untainted by reality. They didn't really love that person, but rather the idea of that person. The second is a long-term relationship but was ruined by the avoider themselves. This is an objectively good relationship both sides have tried, understood, and invested time into. But it was the avoider who pushed the partner away. When they break up, they feel relieved to have regained space and freedom. But a few months later, as intimacy fades, they start to look back and realize that their ex-partner actually possessed all the qualities they needed in a life partner. I believe both scenarios are just scratching the surface. Yes, avoidant individuals sometimes idealize an old relationship, but I think Phantom X isn't really about a specific person. It's not about them missing someone, but about an unmet need. Avoidant people don't truly regret their ex-lovers. They regret a feeling they once had in that relationship. It could be the feeling of being loved, being cared for, or simply having someone there for them. But instead of realizing this, they attribute it to a specific individual, creating the illusion of phantom X to justify their current loneliness. And this is the price they pay. They keep running, keep repeating the same mistakes, keep believing that their happiness lies with someone who's already gone, instead of learning to face themselves. And then, the cycle begins again. Imagine you have an avoidant mindset and are dating Lena. Everything is going well, you're both happy, until one day, Lena asks, "Can I move in with you?" A harmless question, but to you, it's like an alarm bell. Immediately, your mind reacts. "I'm about to be tied down. I need to keep my distance." And so you start comparing. You remember Selena, she never asked about this. Selena wasn't pushy. Selena was easier to be with. But the problem doesn't stop there. When Lena mentions moving in together, you dig into the past to find reasons to retreat. Did Selena want to live together? No, but what if she wasn't persuasive enough? There was Mia, she never suggested moving in. And so on. Lena never has a chance to win in this comparison game because Phantom X isn't a real person. It's an idealized version, pieced together from the best parts of all your exes, a perfect figure that no one in reality can match. According to Levine and Heller in Attached, the Phantom X phenomenon is an unconscious strategy that helps avoidant individuals maintain distance in relationships. You don't really want to go back to your ex, but just knowing they once existed is enough to make every new relationship less appealing. The result? You keep jumping from one person to another, always haunted by what was lost, but never really giving anyone a chance to get close. And this is the paradox of avoidant individuals. The more they run, the lonelier they become. Deep down, they crave connection, crave love, but they're afraid of it. This fear often stems from childhood, when caregivers were inconsistent in meeting their emotional needs, causing them to learn to protect themselves by keeping their distance. So, how do you break this cycle? Avoidant individuals must understand that the problem isn't their exes or not finding the perfect person. They need to confront their fear of intimacy, learn to accept that love isn't something that can be completely controlled, and that true connection only happens when you're brave enough to place your trust in someone. Otherwise, they'll forever be trapped in their own trap, searching for something perfect that doesn't exist, while missing out on what's real right in front of them. This situation has attracted the attention of the research community. Nathan Fox, Charles Nelson, and Charles Ziana conducted a long-term study following 136 children from orphanages in Bucharest. Half of the children were placed in foster families, while the other half continued to live in the centralized care facility. Their findings completely changed our understanding of human brain development and psychology. The children who continued to live in the orphanage had lower IQ scores, struggled with language development and motor skills. Their electroencephalograms, EEGs, showed significantly lower levels of activity compared to children raised in a family environment. In contrast, children who were adopted earlier made significant strides in intelligence, emotion, and the ability to connect with others. However, the research also showed that the timing of intervention played a decisive role. Children adopted before the age of 2 had a better chance of recovery, while those who stayed in the facility longer still struggled to regulate emotions and establish secure relationships. Scientists also found differences in brain structure. Abandoned children had significantly smaller volumes of gray and white matter. Although some areas could recover over time with better care, psychological and behavioral damage could last a lifetime. Researcher Nathan Fox said, "Children need to grow up in an environment with social interaction. Nothing can replace a real family." This emphasizes an important truth. Childhood neglect not only affects emotions, but also leaves a deep mark on the brain and how we form relationships later in life. So what does this have to do with adults who tend to avoid intimacy? As children, if they don't receive responses from their caregivers, they will gradually believe that expressing needs is futile. They learn to stop crying, stop expecting comfort. As adults, they continue to maintain this strategy, convincing themselves that they don't need anyone, that keeping their distance is the best way to avoid being hurt. But the paradox here is what? They still crave to be loved. Despite appearing independent on the outside, they still feel lonely, still desire connection. It's just that fear has prevented them from daring to approach anyone. How to escape this loop? First, they need to understand that the avoidant reaction is not their true self, but a defense mechanism formed from the past. When they become aware of this, they can gradually learn to be more open, step by step, trying to allow themselves to feel love instead of fearing it. Have you ever heard of the concept of yin and yang in Chinese philosophy? A super cool symbol of the balance between two extremes: yin, darkness, stillness, and yang, light, dynamic. They are not only opposite but also blend into each other, like how you both crave freedom and want someone to hug you while sleeping. And if you're an avoidant person, congratulations, you're a miniature stage of this battle. From a young age, avoidant people have been taught, hey, don't trust anyone, it's best to take care of yourself. They grow up with an iron shell, thinking that independence is the only thing trustworthy. But ironically, inside them there is still a small voice whispering, but love isn't so bad either. And so the battle between the need for freedom and the desire for connection continues endlessly. Look at the wheel of avoidant death, their endless loop. When entering a new relationship, they excitedly think, I found the right person, this time it must be okay. This is the moment yang appears, opening a glimmer of hope. But don't rush to be happy, because immediately after that, their internal alarm system will ring. Danger! Someone is invading the safe zone, and so they withdraw, build up a defensive wall, and once again find themselves returning to familiar loneliness. Now let's talk about Phantom X, the strangely haunting phenomenon that keeps avoidant people stuck in the past. When the current relationship becomes too close, they will pull out a perfect image from their ex-lovers, or at least from the most beautiful fragments of memories about them, and think, if only my current lover was like X, how great it would be. But the problem here is, Phantom X is not a real person. It is just an idealized dream, an excuse for them not to engage in real intimacy. So the important question is, are they forever trapped in this loop? If they continue to let instinct control them, then it's very likely they will continue to run away, continue to indulge in fleeting moments of love, and then destroy them with their own hands. But the good news is that they don't have to be like that. Want to get out? The first step is to understand that the instinct to avoid is not their true self, but a defense mechanism from the past. When they realize this, they can try to step out of the safe zone little by little, learn to accept that being close doesn't mean losing control, and most importantly, they must understand that love is not a trap, but something that makes this life more worth living. You can keep running, but then you'll be forever alone. Or you can stop, open your heart, and allow yourself to experience something wonderful called love. Imagine a crying child craving the warm embrace of a caregiver, but instead of being comforted, it is ignored. Initially, it cries louder, but when it sees that no one comes, it learns an important lesson. I'd better take care of myself. And so the avoidant defense mechanism is activated. When they grow up, they no longer believe in relying on anyone. Being alone is fine. They don't need anyone. And so they grow up with two opposing forces constantly tugging inside. On the one hand is the need for absolute independence, yin, darkness, and on the other is the longing to be loved, yang, light. But instead of seeking balance, they often let yin dominate. Why? Because it is familiar, safe, and most importantly, doesn't hurt them. Let's go back to the wheel of avoidant death, a never-ending loop of self-destruction. When they enter a relationship, they are full of hope. This time I found the right person. This is when yang appears, opening a bit of light. But wait! As soon as things get too intimate, their internal alarm system starts to sound. Caution! High risk of commitment. And so they begin to withdraw, push the other person away, and return to the familiar state of isolation. repeating it like a long-running movie, only the main actors are different. Now, let's talk about phantom X, a phenomenon that avoidant people often encounter. When they feel the current relationship is too close, they begin to idealize an ex-lover or an unreal perfect model. They compare, they regret, they believe that Phantom X is the true love. But in reality, Phantom X is just a product of imagination. It is the perfect excuse for them not to face the reality of intimacy. So the big question is, will they be forever trapped in this loop? If they continue to let instinct lead them, the answer is probably yes. They will continue to run away, continue to break genuine connections before they have time to take root. But the good news is that they can change, if they really want to. The way out is not someone appearing and healing them like in romantic movies. There is no scene of someone standing in the rain crying and saying, "Let me love you." But it is they themselves who must recognize and dare to step out of the safe zone. They need to experience a safe relationship where they are not forced to change, but encouraged to open their hearts naturally. They need to understand that loving does not mean losing themselves, but finding a better version of themselves in connection with others. Importantly, if you are loving an avoidant person, you cannot force them to change. If you keep circling around them like a planet orbiting a fading star, you will be drawn into their chaos and lose yourself. Instead, you need to maintain your own solar system. Protect your mental health, set clear boundaries, and show them that a relationship can be solid without threatening their independence. In summary, avoidant people can change, but only when they voluntarily step out of their safe zone. And you also need to remember that loving does not mean sacrificing yourself to pull someone out of their darkness. Thank you for taking the time to watch the video to this point. If you find this content useful or have personal experiences on this topic, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. Let's exchange and learn from each other, because understanding is the first step to creating more meaningful connections.